This is a breakfast oatmeal. It's kind of a pumpkin oatmeal bake that I made that has a lot of ingredients to it just because I was trying to add as many different vitamins and nutrients that I could. And it started off as like 3 ingredients, and then I'd read about something else and add something else, and then kind of continue to do that. You don't have to add all the things that I put in there. This is just something that I made that I was hoping would have good protein and also a variety of nutrients in it. It starts with lentils. I'm going to cook red lentils because red lentils, compared to brown or other dark colored lentils, red lentils will kind of basically cook into mush. They'll melt into any sauce that you make. So if I cook them now, they will pretty easily mix in with the rest of the oatmeal. It's 1/3 cup dry. I'm going to rinse them and then put a cup of water over top. If you don't want to use red lentils, you can use these, which are split mung beans. They also easily go into a sauce and mix in with everything else. They don't stand out and they're not chewy at all. After cooking, they're big and soft and mushy. You can't even tell that they are what a red lentil looks like before it was cooked. Since I'm trying to get as much protein as possible and I'm not eating meat, I do include beans with the breakfast. And I do chickpeas because I personally don't feel like they have a strong flavor. White beans are also another bean that doesn't have a strong flavor. If you were to do red beans or black beans, those to me have more of a typical bean flavor. I'm going to need a total of 1 cup pureed chickpeas. So right now I have 1 cup of dried chickpeas. It's going to end up with a lot more than a cup pureed, but I can save the rest in the freezer. So I'm going to put the chickpeas in here, cover them with water, about 1 inch of water, pressure cook them for 55 minutes. 1 cup dried chickpeas should equal 3 cups cooked chickpeas when they're all done. So as opposed to measuring out the water, I just fill it to be 1 inch or 2 above all the chickpeas. To sweeten it, I use brown sugar or maple syrup or honey, vanilla, and pumpkin pie spice or apple pie spice. Since it's a pumpkin oatmeal, I tend to use fall flavored spices. I use vanilla flavored almond milk to keep the mixture from becoming too thick. I add hemp seeds to add more protein. I do pumpkin and applesauce. This is applesauce. And then I add a splash of coconut milk for some healthy fats. And then as opposed to using regular oats, I grind them up in a blender and it makes oat flour. I add Flax and Chia because they are a good source of omega-3s. I'm going to take a cup of chickpeas and puree them. It's going to take more than a cup of full-size chickpeas to get a cup of puree, but we'll start with a cup. A cup of full pieces of chickpeas came to almost a cup pureed. I used a little bit of the almond milk to thin them out. Toss in the lentils. Alright, try. The chickpeas. The applesauce. I'm going to use a full pint of applesauce. A cup of pumpkin, canned pumpkin. I used pumpkin because I made up this recipe shortly after I had my surgery, and pumpkin is good for upset tummies. I added the applesauce because pumpkin is a really strong flavor and I was kind of trying to dilute it a little bit. I added the lentils and chickpeas because they're a source of protein. I'm going to need a third to half a cup of oat flour. Oat flour is really easy to make. You can just take oats, like if you get a big tube of oats at the grocery store and put them in a blender, they'll end up in a very powdery consistency. So that was half a cup. Gonna need, that's half a cup of almond milk, and I'm gonna add in another full cup to total 1.5 cups of almond milk. I used almond milk because it was vanilla flavored and that sounded really yummy. So this is what I have as the base. There's some fruit, some protein, some fiber from the oat flour, and then the rest of it is whatever spices I chose to make. And I like cinnamon a lot. I use a ton of it. But first I'm gonna do chia seeds and flax seeds. They're both good sources of omega-3s. And another good source for omega-3s would be fish, but I can't eat that right now. So for chia seeds, I ground them up in the blender the same as I did with the oat flour. And I'm gonna do 4 teaspoons of chia seeds. Chia seeds naturally thicken things, so that's going to be a factor in the texture if you add a lot of them. I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of ground flax seeds. I also am going to add either honey or maple syrup, about a teaspoon. I'm just going to eyeball it. Because this recipe started as one thing and then just kind of grew, that's why I added honey and maple syrup, because that's how I wrote it, and so that's how I'm used to eating it and used to making it. Vanilla, about a teaspoon. Well, anywhere from a teaspoon to a tablespoon. I'm also going to add in a half teaspoon of nutmeg. And these are just the spices that I liked. A little bit of allspice. Like 1/8 of a teaspoon, or a couple pinches. Because I couldn't decide between apple pie spice and pumpkin pie spice, I put in a half teaspoon of each. That's what I mean when I said by the end of it, use whatever spices that you like. I couldn't make up my mind, so I just included a little bit of everything. A little bit of salt because it increases the flavor of the other spices. About a half teaspoon. And cinnamon. I have a cinnamon problem. So I put in 4.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. And then I'm going to also add 5 teaspoons of brown sugar and a splash of coconut milk. Added 3 tablespoons about of coconut milk. This is after an hour of cooking and it really doesn't look any different. I did add a little bit of extra water or extra milk to keep it fluid, but you can smell the spices more now, which is why I cook it for a little bit. I use this as a base for any type of breakfast that I'm gonna make. Like there are times I've taken a cup or a cup and a half of this and then put in a cup of pureed blueberries and cooked those together, or mixed blueberries and cranberries and put them together in with this. I keep it in half pint jars. A half pint is the same as 1 cup. So I usually make 5 of them and then heat it up in the microwave. But I'm gonna do one tonight and show you how I make a, I don't know, breakfast cake. Then I'm gonna take the other half and put it in the freezer and it'll be already ready for next week. And the last cup, I'm gonna put into a bowl and turn it into kind of a chocolate cake mixture. Sort of. A loose definition of chocolate cake. To make a breakfast cake, I use 1/2 pint of the breakfast mix, about a 1/2 cup of the almond milk, and I use the vanilla flavored. Half a banana. If you want it to be chocolate peanut butter, I'm going to add in chocolate and any nut butter. I'm going to use peanut butter, but you can use any nut butter that you like. Peanut butter, it's about 2 to 3 tablespoons. 2 to 3 teaspoons of cocoa powder. I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of honey, or you could use maple syrup. And some oat flour, a couple teaspoons. I'm gonna blitz it in the blender real quick. And then I'm going to pour it into a microwave-safe bowl and add 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And then I microwave it from anywhere 3 to 5 minutes. And it will puff up but kind of be like a lava cake. Pretty liquidy in the middle.